there was an M16 flying straight at me. All I know is that as soon as I learned about Palestine, I learned that they wanted the land without the Palestinians in it, and they have always said it. If I did what I did back then, today, I have no doubt they'd execute me. No doubt. The Palestinians are going to win. They're not going anywhere. The Israelis picked the wrong people.
Today, we have a treat for our regular viewers. I'm sure most of you are aware of our guest today. Robert Martin has been a long-time supporter of Palestinian rights. He's traveled many times to Palestine, posted many videos of him confronting Zionists, and some of it is harrowing, some of it is quite hilarious. So I am excited and grateful to be joined by Robert today. Robert, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak about Palestine, because for too long people haven't spoken, and this is why we're in this predicament or this particular smashing of Palestine. So thanks for having me.
Let's start with the kind of the developments in Gaza today. I just want to get your thoughts on what's going on. The aid has been blocked for a while, and they started letting in a tiny amount of aid, which is a drop in the ocean, as the UN says it. What are your thoughts on what's going on?
My thoughts are, when people talk about a ceasefire, there's never been a ceasefire. I mean, Israel has never stopped killing, butchering and stealing, massacring Palestinians throughout Gaza and also through the occupied West Bank. This is to show the world that, look how good we are. We'll allow 10 trucks in or 50 trucks in. Their number one goal is to steal Palestine without the Palestinians. They've turned the dial up today where it's hundreds of Palestinians are getting killed every day, and we're scrolling because human beings, we're becoming accustomed to seeing dead children, and we're stopping on things like exercise equipment or these other things that make us laugh, and we're forgetting about Palestine. Israel knows this, so they are able to do all of these heinous war crimes. Nothing surprises me. Nothing surprises me of what they can do. All I know is that as soon as I learned about Palestine, I learned that they wanted the land without the Palestinians in it, and they have always said it. If you've looked hard enough, they have been openly calling for it.
In terms of your journey learning about Palestine, did you have any understanding or any awareness of Palestine growing up in Australia? Is this something that's talked about in Melbourne?
Not in my world. It wasn't. I went to a private school. I had a good education for a while. It was never taught there. I do remember in hindsight seeing on the news how that Israel was always defending itself and how the Palestinians or terrorists were trying to annihilate the Jewish people in Israel. And it never clicked to me. My best friend and business partner is Palestinian, and he's not just a Palestinian. He's a very vocal Palestinian. He's at all the rallies. He has been forever. He had his first rally in his mummy's tummy. That's how long he's been going. Best friend, business partner, best man at my wedding. He used to tell me, Rob, they're killing my kids. They're killing kids that look like my kids. They're stealing the land. And then I would go at home and I'd watch the news, and the news would tell me something completely different. So for 10 years, I never believed him. I never believed him of what was going on. And in 2014, Israel started killing Palestinians with helicopters, jets, ships, and you would start to see it on the news. You'd start to see these kids. I used to go into his office and he'd be crying because all the kids that were getting killed looked like his kids. They were brown kids. And I was in shock because he's a tough guy. And I thought, wow, maybe what he's telling me is true. And so I started to actually read, and then I started to come across documents that showed journalists how to write. And every time they used the word Palestinian, they must use the word terrorist. Every time they used the word Palestinian, they would never name him. They would never say that he was a father or a son. Every time they talk about the Jewish Israeli kids being killed, they would be given a name, a loving father. They were always in self-defense. And then when I saw that, I started to see the news, and the way the news actually explained it was exactly like this. It's exactly the same way. And these documents got sent. One's called the Israel Project, which is a document. Anyone can Google it. And then I started to hear the politicians using the same rhetoric, exactly the same rhetoric, saying Israel has the right to defend itself. The Palestinians have started this war, which you always hear. And in the end, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go and have a look. So I decided to go and have a look, and that changed my life in 2014. It completely and utterly changed my life.
Right. What was your first impression when you first arrived in Palestine? Did you go through the airport first of all? And what was your impression? Or can you kind of explain to us the journey you went on?
Yep. So I went through Jordan and Alamy Bridge. So I didn't go through Tel Aviv. I went through the quieter way, which was supposed to be quite good. I deactivated all of my social medias, and back then I wasn't really known. I wasn't really known at that stage. I started to feel the difference of the country as we went across the bridge. The buses were stopped that I was in. Soldiers all got on. They had brown chinos and a white T-shirt. They had a sidearm, a revolver, and an M16. And I thought, what's going on here? All the Arabs had to get off the bus, and I didn't. And I thought, this is, pretty strange. This is not right. But that was my first real vision of racism, which was pretty harsh. We got back on the bus. They took us to the border. I knew, again, I could see a whole lot of elderly and families, women and children. They had been sitting in this particular area for hours. They were exhausted, absolutely exhausted. This was their border. They were going home. They were going home. And these Israeli kids, because they're all young with the guns, tried to get me to go in front of all these people. Now when I come home to Australia, I expect to be going through the main lanes because they know who I am. We've got the documents, we've got all of that. I refused to go to jump the line, and it was awful to see the treatment of these Palestinians returning to their own home by 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that had been raised to hate Palestinians and basically given a directive to make their life hell, so they will leave.
And on this journey to Palestine in 2014, is that when you first started filming? Did you immediately have that sense that, okay, this all needs to be documented?
No. I had no plan on documenting anything. I didn't go to document. I'm not a journalist. I'm a business owner. So I didn't go there to create any issues or anything like that. But one thing I am not is I'm not a coward. I won't be stood over. I won't be bullied. That's just simply not the way I'll be. And if I see people being bullied, I'll speak up. And it's funny, all of my footage, 95% of my footage is me with a camera holding it up here like this. I didn't have a film crew, but they didn't have the courage to try and grab the phone off me either. But I started to see things and I thought, no one's ever going to believe me. No one's ever going to believe me. So I did start to film. And on the first day, we uploaded a particular video of me talking to soldiers. As I got out of the car, first of all, I went and visited a guy called Hamdi Abu Rama who lives in Berlin. Berlin's a small village. Became famous for the 5 broken cameras because the soldiers used to come through, break all the cameras and stand over people. They executed Bassem, who was Bassem Abu Rama, by firing a gas canister straight into his chest, caught on camera, and the soldiers were trying to stop and repress the people protesting. So I got there and we're having a cigarette and a coffee. Hamdi got a phone call because he's the local journalist, and they said that the soldiers were up the top of the hill trying to take children's play equipment. And I could see him animated and, worried. And he said to me, "Stay here." I said, no, I'm going to come. So I was in the front seat of the car. We got up to the top of the hill, 4 soldiers, a Jeep. And as I got up there, I hadn't got out of the car yet. There was an M16 pointing straight at me.
Wow.
They were shocked because I was a white guy. Very easy to intimidate the Palestinians who have no access basically to lawyers. They can get locked up, they get killed, and they've got no recourse for it. But to see me there was shocking to them. And so I started to film and walk up to the guy. He was hiding, and it's online. He was hiding his face behind his M16 because he didn't want me to film him. So I just kept going closer and closer and closer. And then they threw a stun grenade at me, which for some reason it didn't affect me at all. It's what they throw at your feet and they explode. And I think that freaked out the soldiers a little bit to go, what the hell is going on here? This guy's not going anywhere. I told them that I had cameras, one on the top of the hill and one of the houses, because I had to protect myself. And I knew at that point that I needed some protection. And the soldiers sort of backed up and left at that stage. And that was my first ever video. We uploaded it that night and it went viral. And so when I went to a few of the refugee camps, people knew me. They had seen me do this particular video. And that was the first video. And I probably ended up doing 50, maybe 40 there. But that was a day that changed my life. And then to go down, drinking coffee and having dinner afterwards and talking about it. And then people from other villages came over to meet me because normally people go there and they don't document anything because they're either too scared or they feel that they don't want to make issues over there so they can go back. But I felt that I had a responsibility. I had a responsibility to expose the blatant racism, the blatant hatred. And meeting some of these kids, there must have been 3, 4, 5 of them limping, and they'd all been shot in the sciatic nerve. Now, that's not by coincidence. And this is a small village that is famous. It's famous for its marches and protests. People go from all over the world to go over there. And it's not by accident that these kids are all walking around like this. I mean, they're shot. They can never walk again properly. And then that was another thing I thought, I've got to really start to document this sort of stuff as well, because the kids, they're sweet kids. They're happy. I mean, you're Palestinian. The Palestinian community, they're loving, courageous, and you want to help them.
When you were filming these and when you were kind of confronting whether it's soldiers or whether it's settlers, did you feel like you could get away with maybe a little bit more because you held an Australian passport, for example?
Yes. Yep, I did. I had a white privilege. No doubt I got a white privilege. And I could see that in the face. I could see it clearly in the face of the Israelis because they didn't know what to do with me at this particular point. Because, do we scare him off? Do we say too much? Do we be his friend? And you could just see they don't want to upset the Australian government or the American government. But Rachel Corrie, and there's been numerous activists that have been killed, and there's never been a charge. They've got away with it every single time. Now, if I did what I did back then, today, I have no doubt they'd execute me. No doubt. I mean, they've been doing it in Gaza. With the journalists have been saying, the accidents or misfires or they're targeted attacks, and so there's no doubt that that's what they would do.
I want to go back to your first trip to Palestine. Was there something that happened on that trip that made you think, okay, I need to come back again and I need to talk? Is there something specific that happened on that trip?
Yeah, there was. There was I was over there. My daughter was 6 years old at the time. I heard from a journalist that two 6-year-olds had been run over by a settler and driven off. So it was a hit and run, clear hit and run. I went and visited the family, and there's a journalist, Naomi Wolf. We organised a huge banner to show the family that the world is in fact watching. You have support. You're not here all alone, because I know that that's how a lot of the Palestinians feel. And when I went over there, the soldiers were very aggressive with me, saying that I wasn't allowed to visit. And they were intimidating the family. So the family not only had their daughter executed with a car, intentionally killed, and then one was mentally ill forever. She's got brain damage. And so this poor family, they are suffering the consequences of their daughters being murdered. They have soldiers out the front of their house, and the soldiers are telling me that it's to protect the family. And so I asked, and I've got footage. I had a hidden camera at this particular point because they were very upset if I was filming it. So we did film it. And I said, look, have you ever seen a Palestinian with a gun around here? If you're protecting, who needs the protection here? And the soldier said to me, he said, no, I haven't. I've never seen a Palestinian with a gun. I said, then why the hell are you here? Who are you protecting? This is intimidation. This is what this is. And so not only can you not grieve, but as we know, the Palestinians are always blamed for their own deaths. That was one of the pinnacle things that I had to do something. To see there's a photo of me online with the brother and the sister that were left, completely broken family. And, in a civilized world where we are, you'll get counselling. You'll get some sort of help. And there will also, there will be the person that has dealt you this crime, who has killed your family member, will be charged and put in jail. And so there's at least something that you've got there. Not the fact that you have soldiers looking in at you, spitting on your driveway, walking past, not letting you leave. That to me, and that I knew the whole of Palestine was going through that. It wasn't just where I was going. My timing isn't like that. It's everywhere. And having my kids, thinking of my kids ever having to be put through something like that was devastating. Devastating. And look, and there was another. I was going to say that there was another place that I used to go get my hair cut a lot. Like the Palestinian guy is fantastic. I go every 2 days. About a week in, I asked. He got a certificate and a photo, and he said, it was my cousin. He was my apprentice." And I said, "Oh, fantastic. Where is he?" Well, he was executed at that very door. Every time he walks into work, he's got to step over the spot where his nephew was executed in Jerusalem, right near the bus station. Right near the bus station. No one ever charged again. And so from a Palestinian point of view, what do? Do you speak up? Why? And this is part of the entire Israeli regime, the rogue state colonizers. They are doing everything they possibly can to get rid of the Palestinians. And as you said, as we started off, there's only a few trucks going in, so they're starving them over there, and they're just using different strategies everywhere. And it took the guy, the barber, a week, or maybe it was 2 weeks, to trust me, to be able to tell me that. And you just get goosebumps, and it's awful, and it's so blatant. This is the other thing that I don't like, because I did not go looking for any of this, and I've got story after story after story. Why don't mainstream media go in there and document the truth, and put it on the TV, and allow us to make our own informed decision? Stop fucking lying to us.
I mean, the question about the mainstream media is what's their agenda? That's probably, at the beginning of the war, the genocide, I had still a level of trust in the mainstream media that I was expecting, at least, I was expecting biased coverage. I wasn't expecting outright lies, And then all the atrocity propaganda came out, and it all was lies. All of it was lies. And so my trust in the mainstream media has just been completely obliterated. And the issue with that is that who can you trust anymore? As in, you trust the people on the ground, and then the people who have been telling you for years, and they do adverts about how they do fact checking, and they're the ones you can trust. You can't trust random people online, and they've completely eroded that system, all to protect this genocidal little what's the word?
What's a project?
Yeah, it's the spoiled little brat. It's what it is. Israel gets to do what it wants.
I think one thing that you can trust, and I think that most people should look at it more, is exactly what the top Israeli government is saying continually. They've been saying this for years. Well, this is what we're going to do. And years ago, after 2005, after they supposedly left Gaza, they started calorie counting back then. And so they have never really hidden, but the mainstream media hasn't had. They've got the responsibility to tell us the truth so we can make our own informed decision. But no, they continue on with all of the lies. Where the world's waking up, going, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening," and it's been happening for so long.
What's kind of a silver lining to the death and destruction? And I say this with a heavy heart, and it's difficult to talk about silver linings with what the people of Gaza are going through, is that so much has been exposed. The mainstream media, which supposedly was a place for you to get informed, is now clearly a place for you to get controlled. Their aim isn't to inform you, to make you see the world correctly or see it through different eyes. Their aim is to make sure that you sit at home, stay comfortable, just worry about yourself and putting food on the table for yourself, and forget about what's going on. Forget about the massacres being committed in your name, and it is being committed in the West's name. The Israelis say time and time and again, they say they are committing. They're going to war to protect the West from so-called hordes of Islamist barbarians.
And the American people are paying for it. They actually are paying for it. They could do with the cash. I mean, they've got homeless, they've got many issues, but yet so many billions and billions of dollars gets funneled over there. And that's the other thing that's just, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah. When you were listening to these stories in your early trips, how long did it take you to understand that this was simply the regular everyday reality for Palestinians? How long did it take for you to no longer be surprised by what you were hearing?
Few days.
Wow.
Because look, I went to just trying to think. I went to a refugee camp, and I was speaking to a gentleman by the name of Muntha. Just before that, I had spoken to some soldiers who were walking across an Islamic grave, with their boots, crunching through it and doing it on purpose. And I started to speak to them, and I got a bit of footage, and I said they're not real men because they were trying to tell me that I wasn't a real man if I didn't film. And they said, we could shoot you from anywhere. And I said, okay, good luck. Do whatever you need to do. They've walked off. I'm interviewing Muntha, who is quite a well-known activist, a Dahisha refugee camp. And then I hear this, and it's an M16 round that they had walked down around the corner and shot, not at me, but towards me, just to say, we'll take a pot shot. And during this interview, there's a mural of this young kid who was executed, 16 years old, coming home from school, had a school bag on, shot through probably, 70 metres, 60 metres, maybe a little bit further. Big great door. But within that great door, there's another little door. When the gun comes through the little hole, and they shoot him through the heart and they kill him. So he's dead. His family, kids, because it's a community area. There's kids everywhere. But the soldiers come out at around 3:00, between 1 and 3, depending on what school and how old. That's when they're coming home, and so this is when they start to do this to intimidate them. Well, they put a mural up. A great picture of this kid. There's bullet holes in the picture. So, it's planned, because every time these kids go home, not only do they have the memory of their friend being executed for doing nothing, only being a Palestinian, they have to walk past the picture. This is what can happen to me. This is what probably will happen to me. Because the chances are pretty high. I visited another Mohammed El-Kurd. You may know this name. The El-Kurds have become famous because of Jacob, who said that if I don't steal it, somebody else will. So I met him, and he was a kid. He was 14 or 15 or 16 maybe where I first met him, and I knew that he was special. You could tell by the way he was speaking, and he would document. I was with a lady that could interpret for me, so he sort of opened up. It took him a while because I'm definitely not an Arab. I'm more likely to be a Jewish guy than an Arab, and so it's sort of a bit standoffish. And his front of his house was taken. So for years and years, every year he'd come home from his birthday, the family would be starting to build. Years after getting the actual permit for the house, the family would go down to try and get the permit, and they'd say, "Look, no, come back. We'll give it to you maybe next stage." Long story short, they finished the front of their house, the renovation. Israelis come over, lock part of the house up. Within a few days, there's a bus coming down the street, a whole lot of Jews, some from America, some from Israel. And there's footage of this. And you can see young Mohammed El-Kurd. He was 12 years old documenting this. So it's out there. And they are dancing around in there, taking his home. East Jerusalem, Sheikh Jarrah. And he's now, he was voted, I think, like one of the most 100 or 50 most influential writers of people. He's brilliant. He gets labelled an anti-Semite. He gets called an anti-Semite for speaking out of a people that have taken his house, stolen his house, whose entire job, they'd only be in there for 3 to 6 months because they were supposed to be so noisy, loud, intimidating, so the old Kurds would leave. But he didn't leave. Now he's become somebody, which is fantastic. 100 metres up the road, there's another young guy, another Mohammed. He had just got out of jail because he stuck up for his... he came home and there were settlers beating his mother because there's a settlement very close. And so he went in and he got home and he was protecting his mother, fighting to get him off. He went to jail. The settlers didn't. And I said, what do you want to do? And he said, he's a funny kid. And he said, look, I want to be a doctor. But he says, there's no point, Rob, because even if I got my degree, where am I going to work? Because again, it's impossible. So he's not going to bother. Then working another day, walking around, and I see a carriage load of cars and cars with flashing lights, people with balaclavas on. And I thought, geez, what's going on here? And this is the crew, the crew. It's the demolition crew. So they're coming, and they were there between 1 and 3. I can't remember the time, 1 and 3. I've got a photo of it. I've got a photo and of evidence of everything I've seen. I've got photos of it. And there's a family of kids, the young girls in the hijabs that just come home from school. And this is when they come to demolish their house. There was maybe 9 to 12 people living within this house and a half, all there with their school books and their school bags. And you're sitting there looking, and then so one of the guys I was talking to, he started off with a balaclava. He took it off at the end. I don't know if he was overly comfortable with what he was doing, but he knew that he had to do it. There was no ifs or buts about it. He had to do it. And so when you see a family like that, because they've got nowhere to go now, there isn't anywhere to go. The Israeli government don't say, look, we've demolished your house, we'll find a place. And people have the audacity to wonder why the Palestinians have an issue with the Israelis. I'm one guy walking around, no film crew, and I'm seeing all of this. It is an absolute disgrace that any Western government can allow this to happen. any Western government. Nobody can possibly say that they don't know. Nobody can say these things. Nobody can say, I should have done something, because you can do something. It's the time. And we're sitting here now, October 7. And I've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying October 7 changed the world. Israel, it was the beginning of the end for Israel. It is the time that the world saw them for what they are. I saw them for what they are in a smaller amount in 2014, in the little sections. I'm not surprised at what they do here. By seeing these, the ones through the occupied West Bank, I can see exactly those guys doing the same thing throughout Gaza. And the world has woken up, and we will be sitting here one day and we will discuss how good the liberation of Palestine was, but why it took so long and why it took so much blood. Every single Palestinian person, every single Palestinian, every single one of them has to be remembered. Every drop of their blood is going towards the liberation of Palestine. And every single person that participated in it will never be forgotten. We will hold them to account. And anybody that hasn't spoken up, anybody that has ignored it, will not be forgotten either. That's where we're going. We just have to get there soon.
It kind of terrifies me a little bit to think about where we are today, how much devastation has already occurred, and how much is likely to occur, how much more is likely to occur. And it might, what we're seeing today might be a drop in the ocean.
Unfortunately,
it might, yeah. And it's a bit difficult to think in those terms because people are suffering in real time. You know, it's not a theoretical exercise when we're talking about the liberation of Palestine and the amount of sacrifices that might be made or might have to be made, because we're seeing the consequences of that in real time being streamed to our phones constantly. The amount of shocking imagery that we've seen over the last 18 months has desensitized a large proportion of people watching. I mean, it's become a daily occurrence to see a child with half his or her head missing. It's become a daily occurrence to see a child's body parts being collected in a plastic bag, yeah. or amputees. I saw the other day, I think her name is Miss Rachel. She is a kind of a children's content creator, and she met up with a little child from Gaza. Now she's been under attack, heavy attack. Why? Because she cares about all children, not just Western white children or whatever. She cares about all children, that includes Palestinians. And she's there and she is playing with this little girl, and she's missing both legs, this little girl, because of what's happening in Gaza. And it's difficult for me to even imagine what more carnage that might take place in the future.
I think we need to take Israel at its word. And Israel at its word is that they are going to corral the Palestinians as far up as they can, because they want them all in one spot. That's where the aid will end up, and they'll corral them all into that one tiny spot, and then either keep murdering or start building, which is has been their plan for so long.
Yeah, the other day, I saw on Twitter, you know how they say when you click translate on a Hebrew tweet, it looks like something out of Mein Kampf. And there was a man, some sort of, I don't know, ex-diplomat or something, or ex-government, and he said the children, the babies in Gaza are our enemies. And every other day we're getting these quotes. They're literally, like you said, you just have to listen to them. At every level of society, they've lost their minds, and they have been overtaken by this genocidal fever. And it's not a left and right thing, by the way. It's not a left and right thing. No. And but it's not a. It's sure the ultra right wing they're more brazen a lot of the time, but at every level, the Israeli society today supports the genocide of the Palestinian people.
Yeah. It's fun. I tried a few different tacks when I was over there. I think it was 2014 or 2018. I'd go down Jerusalem through the old city, and there would be the Arab quarters. They're supposed to be for the Arab quarters, but there's Israeli flags up there now. I would talk to some of the people walking through there, and I'd say, what do you think of the Palestinians? And these are like people that had come from America, and often the answer was, "Oh, they don't exist, or we need to kill them." And that was years ago. And they had I'm sure when I was over there in 2014, one of their ministers, she was a lady, I can't remember her name, but she said that all the Palestinian kids are the snakes. The mothers had to be killed because the kids would grow up and be our enemy. And so she was saying that years ago. And I think it's okay because it's them. I can't imagine if we put Albanese, our Prime Minister, on the TV as a joke, and he said, "Oh, I think we need to kill all of these particular things." What would happen? And the Australia would implode because we can't imagine having a leader quite like that speaks so openly. And as we were saying before, with the media not only lying to us, but they don't give us all of that information either. They omit a lot of that stuff that would really turn people.
Yeah. So, for example, here in Britain, the BBC, every time someone who is brought onto the show, someone from the anti-genocide camp, would call what Israel is doing a genocide, they'd immediately say, "Oh yeah, but Israel would deny that they are committing a genocide. Israel would deny these claims, right?" But they don't mention the fact that the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, said literally days after October 7th, he said a whole society is to blame, or something along those lines. It's not true that they didn't know, weren't aware. That's what he said about the entire society in Gaza. The prime minister compared the people of Gaza to Amalek, and I'm sure you're aware of this quote. This refers to a biblical passage in which the Israelites were ordered to kill man, woman, child, infant, and even animals, livestock. And then you had the Yoav Gallant, the defense minister at the time, who said that they were dealing with human animals and they would block all food, water, electricity. The list goes on and on and on, and yet we have to sit here and listen as we're being told that we shouldn't believe what we're seeing with our own eyes. We shouldn't believe what we're hearing with our own ears. And it's really kind of exposed so much about the way the world works, and about it's completely changed the worldviews of so many people.
Yeah.
In terms of worldview change, I wanted to ask you your experience in Palestine earlier, so before October the 7th, I'm talking, so 2014 until 2023. Did that change your worldview at all? Did what you saw in Palestine make you see different things in a different light?
Yes. Going to Palestine opened my eyes to Islam as well, because growing up, white, I didn't really see any racism. I didn't think I was racist, but I would have been. And I would have had prejudice against Islam as well, because you hear certain things that just aren't true. And so my experience I'm agnostic. Sometimes I'm, a little bit not. Sometimes I am. But I judge religion by the people that I mix with. And because that, to me, they're living the proper religion. Some people can talk about religion and use it for the way they want it. And so, it opened my eyes up to Islam, and I read the Quran, and, I think it's beautiful. I think the Muslims are beautiful people. I think that doing Ramadan is a fantastic thing. But, praying 5 times a day in itself is also such a commitment, which shows a beautiful heart for people. And I think that is beautiful. And so that was one thing. I started to read different articles, and I'd also try and find 2 or 3 different articles about the same subject, because you just don't know who is writing it. Before I read a book, I'll Google the author and I'll find out what they've done and whether, before I'm even taking an interest in that. So it changed. I think I made me a better person as well. Maybe better to my kids. Because you see things a little bit differently, and you can really appreciate what you got. We don't know how lucky we are here, and I've been given that opportunity where I've seen the other side of the world where there's evil. So
before the current genocide, and the stories that we hear, the things that we see have surpassed any and all red lines, surpassed any and all kind of grotesque things you can imagine could happen. But during your time going to Palestine, traveling to Palestine, speaking to people, is there something that you either witnessed or a story that you heard that really stood out to you as, extraordinarily?
there's so many. The resilience of the Palestinians. I would often ask the Palestinians what they think of Jews, because I wanted to know. And I was very quickly corrected that we don't have a problem with Jews. We have a problem with Zionism and colonizers. That is our problem. And I was very quick for them to say that, and I thought it was great. If I offered to help them, they would say, I don't want your help. I want you to, if you can, tell the world about us. Just tell them. Tell them the truth about us. And again, I thought that was pretty cool. It just shows the sort of people that you're dealing with. But there would be too many to target one, I think. One thing that does stand out a little bit, and I've only just started talking about it, is when I was leaving in 2018, I was saying goodbye to passed my passport in there, and I said, thanks for having me. It's great. And she said, oh, yeah, thanks for coming. And she swiped my passport. And then all of a sudden, I had to sit somewhere else. They put me in a room, and they tried to ask me where I'd been, and because they'd obviously seen the videos. So at this stage, it wasn't a secret. And I thought it was funny that, they said, look, you'll never come back. You'll never, ever come back. And if you do, we will kill you. And for someone that's got a title of doing that, can you imagine someone where you are coming home through your border checkout and they're saying that? Actually, there would be two stories, I think, now that I'm thinking. One of them was a guy called Sammy. I did a video with him. He has a farm where years ago, the Israelis have been trying to buy his land, and he said, no. So they took some, and then they took some more, and then they took some more. They ended up killing his sister, his father. He was one of these guys who just wanted a hug, Sammy. And then we hear, because you can see the actual settlements where they're building now on his land. And then we could hear I could hear the motorbikes or the quad bikes, the bikes with four wheels. They're settlers trying to intimidate. Again, if people go to Palestine, and they should go, and if you go to pick olives, you might end up on Sammy's farm. That's how the world can help, and they connect with the Palestinians and Sammy. But to hear his story, that and he doesn't want any money, he just wants his land. That's all he wants. He just wants a little bit of peace, because they don't get a reprieve. The quad bikes will come out at night with the lights. Now, this is a story. Another one happened in Hebron. There was a Israeli executed a Palestinian on film. This clear film of it. We can then see the Palestinian on the ground moving very slightly. Really couldn't do anything. The soldier walked up and shot him point blank with an M16 rifle. You may have heard of it. I don't want to even give these names. Well, a few months later, that particular boy that shot, he ended up being on a supermarket bag as a hero. He did 18 months. He got let out a little bit early, but the family living there, one of them's a reporter, the dad, and he took this footage. So you can imagine what he's trying to do. He's trying to get the footage out and get charges laid. Well, every night the soldiers urinate down down the chimney of his house. He's got daughters living there. He kept trying to get charges laid because he just knew he had to have a win. He can't let these people do this. Bearing in mind the person that was shot was a friend of his. And this did hit world news. But yet nothing has come of it from him other than if you keep trying to do all of this, something else is going to happen to you. But the steadfastness and the family, the smiles of the kids were very strong. That's the one thing. The number one thing I take out of there is their strength and their and I wasn't, as I said, I wasn't there very long, and I saw so much crime. But the Palestinians are going to win. They're not going anywhere. The Israelis picked the wrong people. They have no idea. They had no idea what they were in for. And they're not going to go anywhere, no matter what happens. And I look forward to the day where we can go over there and hang out in their place without, the fear of being executed. But I think if people can go, they should go. It helps their society, it helps their morale, it helps their knowing that people actually do care about them, I think is important. So there are groups out there that can help you. Maybe not the best time right at the moment. But
Yeah, the extraordinary thing about Palestinians is that they just want a little bit of dignity. They don't want to lead some global revolution, against the empire. Or they just literally just want to live in dignity, in peace, in their own land. And the concessions that have been made by Palestinians over the years are proof of that.
And they've made it clear. They have made it very, very clear that their issue is with the occupation. And I think the world needs to know that. And look, let's be honest. I mean, Hamas was created for a particular reason, and that reason was to actually try and help liberate Palestine. That's what they were created for. They haven't just come out of nothing. And I think a lot of that stuff is forgotten because they are a liberation movement. And if they do not resist, they will not exist. That's just what is fact.
And it's the demonization of Palestinians to a level that even if you have any sort of connection at all to a group that's prescribed by the West, a group that's seen as a terrorist organization by the West, and not the rest of the world, mind you, your story is now invalid. And we saw this in the BBC documentary. You've probably heard about it. They took it down because this child, who in the entire run through of the documentary didn't say a single positive thing about Hamas, but because of who his father may or may not have been, now his story was no longer worth airing. His story was no longer worthy of telling the world. However, the Israelis, no matter how many war crimes they commit, the BBC and other mainstream outlets, they'll continue to protect them, essentially, to defend what they're doing. We're seeing a bit of a change now, though, and I want to ask you actually about that, because all of a sudden, and it seemed out of nowhere, a plethora of mainstream news outlets, whether it's the New York Times or whatever, all came out with editorials condemning what Israel was doing, even though for over a year and a half they were fully on board. How did you see that development? Like, what were your thoughts when you started reading these and hearing about this?
I thought it was pretty cool. I think the first one I saw was the BBC. One of the Israeli people sent a plan and said, "This is what we've bombed. It's the hospital, but look underneath it. There's tunnels." And the BBC came back saying that that's not what you bombed. The plan is a different thing, and they could tell that they were trying to lie. Below the hospital, there were water tanks, and so I think as soon as the BBC started saying that, I think it only takes one, and then all of a sudden the rest of them can sort of do it all very, very quickly. It sort of works, and this is why I think, look, this whole thing could be over pretty quickly. It could be, or it could take a long time, because with South Africa and the apartheid over there, it seemed to be very quick at the end. It just takes a long time to get to that particular point, and then it's just fait accompli. And it's great. I think it's great. They'll obviously look at the reviews or the people making their comments to see whether or not they keep on that tack. But when you do read through comments, because I do it sometimes, through certain newspapers, and I thrilled to see so many pro-Palestine people writing the comments in there. It's something that you see on all of the pages, that is a huge thing that can make change.
For me, though, the thing that is kind of peculiar to me is that this is not the first time Israel has lied. It won't be the last. But throughout the genocide, even right at the beginning, the Israelis were lying. Whether it's the so-called, you saw the CGI animation they made of the command and control post under Al Shifa Hospital, and there was nothing there. There was like maybe one or two tunnels that were built with the hospital at the time the hospital was built. But somehow it took 18 months and over 53,000 officially dead, but we know that's way higher. It took all of that death and destruction for these mainstream outlets to finally come around, and it's just I'm still wondering what was it? What was it like? How is there like kind of a number?
Yeah, I think it's hard to be the first one, but then after that they go, fine, let's just do it. But let's be honest. I mean, still people get the sack pretty quickly, depending on what side they're on. So it's hard for them to go full out. Imagine if they gave us a job over there for a while.
I guess when one outlet finally comes out and says it, I guess you don't want to be the last. So then you see a flood.
That's true too. Yeah, correct. Yeah, makes sense.
I want to ask you about going back to Australia and how the reception was for you there. Were you ever, for example, talked to by the Australian government or by the police? Did they ever talk to you about your activities in Palestine? And kind of how did you start working with local activists on local advocacy groups in Australia?
So I had the anti-terrorism unit come to my office. I hadn't been to Palestine at this particular stage. I was only writing on Facebook. And because I'm white, people started to believe me. The unit came over and they said, "Look, we'll be honest with you. We had a lot of complaints about you, and if we get a certain amount of complaints, we have to investigate." I said, "Yeah, no problems." So 2-3 hours later, they were with me, and it was the best thing in the world that they could have done, because they know I'm normal, they understand what I'm doing, they get it. Can't believe I'm going to go to Palestine. Let us know how you go. It was all of those sorts of things. So that was a good story. So it could have gone anyway, but it was perfect. And then joining all of these Palestinian groups, I didn't have to, because my business partner and my best mate and my wedding best man at my wedding, he basically ran all of those organisations. So for me to not listen to him is even bigger than just listening to a Palestinian, because he organised all the events. He founded Olive Kids, which is a organisation for kids in Gaza, and a number of other organisations. And so it was eye-opening for him. But it was, no one had really done what I had done. I think a lot of the Palestinians were surprised. They said, they're not going to let you back in. And I said, yes, I do. So I thought it has been helpful. I know that I've opened eyes that a Palestinian can't open, and it's just because either we're racist or we just don't think the same, or for whatever reason it is, there's those things. And Miko Peled, you're familiar with Miko?
Yep.
Miko was one of the main ones that opened my eyes to Palestine. I read his book, The General's Son, and then in 2018, he and I went to Palestine together, which was really cool. So he took me to see a lot of the Jewish community within Israel that are pro-Palo, and so that was really cool. Then I interviewed his sister as well, who put a book out in relation to the education system in Palestine. And so that interview's done millions of views, which is really cool because it shows the racism within the entire education system of Israel. And so I know that me speaking can help people because it's exactly the way Miko woke me up when my friend Palestinian didn't. So, there's we all have to do our things differently. We all will, it's important that we all do what we can do. I don't worry about trying to impress anybody. I just put in the truth of what I know out there and hopefully that people can hear it.
You later got involved with the Freedom Flotilla coalition, and this is long after the attack on the Mavi Marmara, I'm guessing.
Yes.
What was that like for you? Were you afraid that something similar would happen to you, and what was that journey like for you?
I knew I couldn't get into Palestine again, and I knew I wouldn't be able to get into Gaza, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to go on a boat. And so I flew over to Malta and I met the crew, fantastic crew, staunch crew. One of the main organisers, his father was executed in 2010 with a gunshot straight to here. A lot of them were executed that way. And so there's a lot of people aren't going to give up. They're going to keep going. And so when I was there, it was maybe 14 months ago, the boat didn't get out. There was too much political stuff going on. And where the Maltese should have let the boat out, there's a form that should take 7 days or 24 hours, a short period. It had taken 12 months. And there was just too much. There was too little movement to stay there. And I was going to go on the one that's just gone, but I had a few things that it just wasn't going to work for me. And then I woke up and I heard that they've been bombed. So it just shows you and anyone listening out there that Israel has some power out there, because if Israel didn't do it, they know who did, because they would have been sharing. And it's an incredible thing that I think it was a bomber, that a particular plane dropped drones out of the sky, and then the drones came in and did what they did with pinpoint accuracy, mind you. So they can be pinpoint when they want to be, absolutely, or they can drop bombs and kill entire communities. But it's a great organisation. The 10 of them were killed, I think, from memory. 10 of them were killed in 2010, and it was clear executions. And they were tried. We tried to sue. I didn't. There was organisations trying to sue, and nothing. You just cannot get Israel for anything.
And that does wonders for fighting anti-Semitism, obviously, because the so-called one Jewish state can get away with all sorts of crimes, and then you're labelled an anti-Semite for questioning it, and it's terrifying, I think, for what kind of the sentiment that might be growing in the world because of the actions.
These are activists. I mean, they're clearly activists. I'm sure a report will come out to say, one of them had spoken to Hamas or something like that down the track, because that's what they did with the Mavi Marmara in 2010. They said that there was people affiliates of Hamas in here, there were weapons, but there was no evidence or anything like that. But yeah, absolutely, they've got the sway that they can get away with anything, and they do.
Yeah, it's one can only wonder where that could lead to, and it's not. I don't think it's a good place personally for anyone, Jews otherwise. In terms of the kind of situation in Australia, what's it like being active for Palestine in Australia? Is there a lot of hostility? And there's a lot of hostility, for example, in the United States at the moment. There's some hostility here in the UK, but we have a bit more room to maneuver. In France, in Germany. In Germany, it's really bad, for example. What's it like in Australia?
I think it's pretty good here, to be honest. I think that the people are very pro-Palo at the moment. You can see it growing. They've got marches every Sunday at the moment. They had so many there last Sunday. Occasionally there might be a small group of pro-Israel community out there and about, but there's not many. We had an election, and the Greens and a lot of the politicians are speaking up for Palestine because they know it's not just about Palestine; it's about more than that. We need to get us out of the hole, and I believe it's just a matter of time. Albanese, who was our Prime Minister 20 years ago, was in Parliament, and he spoke so highly of Palestine and so negatively about Israel. But yet now he's too scared to really do a lot. So, there's a lot of still a lot of hurdles to jump for them. But it might be like the media. It might just take the right person to say the right thing, and then everyone go. And look, let's be honest. If people allow it to keep going on, what does it say about the human race? I mean, it's But I think Australia is a pretty good place for Palestine within the community.
And obviously there are some parallels between what's going on in Palestine today and what has happened in Australia over the last few hundred years. The colonialism, the British was responsible for colonialism in both instances. Is that something, the colonialism and the effects on the native population, is that something that you dealt with before opening your eyes to Palestine, or is it something you had to confront afterwards?
There's still a lot of work to do with the Indigenous community. They're very supportive of Palestine, as you would expect. It's the same sort of moral issues. But I mean, they were left, and the community's been irresponsible for them over the years, and that things need to change and things need to get better.
You shared on your Instagram recently a post which is a shared statement from the Freedom Flotilla Coalition and a couple other advocacy groups attempting to break the siege on Gaza. Could you run us through what that statement is about? There's
a number of community organisations. A lot of people have been speaking about how people should just turn up in Palestine or Gaza. And so there are a few communities, and the Freedom Flotilla are joining forces with them because when the governments fail, they sail is their motto, and they're going to continue on. Even though they've been bombed, they will continue on to go. But they're also going to try and help the walk to Gaza as well. And so what I suggest is you can have a look on my page or Google it or go to the Freedom Flotilla site and have a look and see what you can do. Because if you can't go there, you can still help in other ways, whether it's posting stuff, whether it's donating, whether it's doing anything. It is all helpful or just interesting to keep and watch. I think it's a great initiative. I don't know why it hasn't been done years ago, because I always wondered what would happen if thousands of people turned up to go to Palestine. And they're all denied. It'd be interesting to see, and it would be definitely a spectacle. I can't see it being not safe either, and so it would be something that could work. It's still not completely and utterly determined of exactly how it's going to work, but within that post are the different agencies. You can click on a link and have a look.
For the Arabs who are kind of on the peripheries of Palestine, either in Egypt or Jordan, they have, I don't want to say this is an excuse, but they have difficulty, attempting to move or to march for Palestine because of their political realities. They both live under dictatorships. But for someone in the West, they won't get treated in the same harsh manner by the authorities there as a Jordanian or as an Egyptian. Mm. So, like you said, it would be quite a spectacle to see. I want to finish off today with some quick fire questions, if that's all right with you.
Right. God help us.
Firstly, is there anything that you watched or you read recently that you think is a must-see or must-read for people who are interested in Palestine?
No particular books, and it's hard. I go around to a whole lot of different ones. I don't have a particular one at the moment that I'm reading. So that's just, sorry about that.
That's all right. We'll move swiftly on then. Is there one particular myth about Palestine, about Palestinians, that you feel that you'd like to bust and you think you could do so very well?
Palestinians are a loving, humorous, courageous people that just want the truth to be heard. They are not terrorists at all. They are fighting terrorism. And go and meet some Palestinians, meet some online, and it'll change your world forever.
And finally, whilst the situation in Gaza is, devastating and it's not getting better anywhere else, one must keep hoping that tomorrow will be a brighter day. What keeps you hopeful?
I know it's going to change. I just want it to be soon rather than later in my lifetime. It will change, and I want to see the change. I want to see it, feel the liberation. Unfortunately, it won't be an enjoyable overall liberation because of the amount of deaths, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and I've seen it getting closer and closer over the last 10 odd years.
Robert Martin, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you can join us again, and you can share more of your stories.
Thank you very much for having me.